that at last they're gripping this business of needing ammunition, because before we've got the bulk of the stuff, the key stuff that goes bang in these shells from France and particularly America. Quite rightly, as you say, John Healey, Defence Secretary, says, we realise we can no longer rely particularly on America.
A fascinating story on the front of the Times today. There are doubts about Donald Trump's reliability as a security partner, and the defence industry has now considerably increased its ability to make munitions locally as demand grows. The Defence Secretary, John Healey, said the defence industry is the foundation of our ability to fight and win on the battlefield, and strengthening homegrown artillery production is an important step in learning the lessons from Ukraine, he said. Let's get the thoughts of Robert Fox, the defence editor at The Standard. Hello to you, Robert.
Good afternoon.
Welcome, Robert. So look, this business of disentangling defence production from dependency on America, that's not entirely new, but it really has accelerated. Do tell us more.
Well, it is about accelerants, isn't it, and explosives. It's Larissa Brown of The Times, obviously been given a special brief about this. This has been going on since the serious war reignited in Ukraine with the invasion of Ukraine in February 2022. There was a general realization that Britain was very short on vital propellants and explosives for all kinds of ammunition, but particularly artillery ammunition. This is a key component to what we really describe as resilience, a grossly overused word. But what resilience means is you've got to be robust enough to keep going if you're challenged and if you're facing a confrontation, nay, even a conflict. And it was quite clear within weeks of the invasion of February 22, that Britain would run out of ammunition within about a matter of 6 weeks. They gave almost all that it could to Ukraine, which was very much welcomed. I just have to add, they also gave the best of their artillery, because while Larissa's got the story that at last they're gripping this business of needing ammunition, because before we've got the bulk of the stuff, the key stuff that goes bang in these shells from France and particularly America. Quite rightly, as you say, John Healey, Defence Secretary, says, we realise we can no longer rely particularly on America.
Right. So we're talking about ammunition for our artillery, but also equipment which has American components in it, because those pieces of equipment can be blocked from use by America too. And so defence armaments makers are looking for ways around that.
Look, that is a real problem, and it's been growing, and particularly if you have a senior ally, senior partner like America, which is less than favourable and possibly even inimical. Well, in other words, you and your partner are aiming for different things. And by the way, this thing could really get bad quite quickly if America makes any move against Denmark's interests in Greenland, a very key ally, and has worked very especially close with the UK. And the other one, with the election coming up, is Canada. There is a rethink. There's more of a rethink than Whitehall and Westminster really want us in the great public out there to really think about. But there are going to be some big decisions set in train in the next 4 or 5 weeks.
Yes, but let's just look at that job, as you say. Maybe a lot going on behind the scenes that we can't see. But what is clear is that our need for a considerable level of rearmament is now obvious, and the apparent unreliability of the American ally just underlines all of that. The threat from Russia underlines it yet again. I mean, is it clear to people who watch these things closely, Robert, that this strategic defence review is going to be up to the mark?
No. It's absolutely clear it isn't going to be up to the mark. As you probably know, I've been writing quite a bit about this from a wide range of sources. One very senior source put it to me, it's going to be nowhere near as transformative as they've made it out to be. It's not going to do a lot of the restructuring we really need. We need modern forces, modern resources for modern defence, which isn't actually the same as traditional offence. And that's what I fear they're doing. If they're reinventing the wheel, they're reinventing the Cold War armies or pre-Cold War armies and navies and air force. And that is beside the point. there's a bit of office politics going on here, which I'm very surprised that the lobby correspondents haven't picked up on. This thing has been finished for some weeks now, the Strategic Defence Review, about 110 pages, in the words of its senior author, the chairman of the panel, Lord Robertson. That's been around in form for people to look at since February. Definitively, it was finished by the second week of March. Look, it's absolutely clear Keir Starmer doesn't want it to be published. And I think that this is the real row that's going on at the moment. And even there's some advice going into him. You may not like it, Prime Minister. There is a way around it, in the way that the Australian Prime Minister, Tony Albanese, faced a similar problem about 2 or 3 years ago when he was faced with a defence review brought up by a panel with a result that he didn't like. And it is quite clear that the implications of this review do not meet the script, the narrative of Starmer and Reeves. And that is what's going on. This is a row that will go on through the summer if we're not careful. And there are real waypoints, obstacle points, decision points coming up, namely the comprehensive spending review later in the summer, but above all, the NATO summit, where NATO actually has to decide at The Hague, 25th of June, what it's really for now. And really, if America pulls back from European defence, what's the point of doing it in the same old way, and can it reinvent itself? That is a number one problem for Britain, and it's not being addressed at the moment. The comprehensive spending review, and there is a consensus among military chiefs and analysts for the government that there needs to be a national security strategy. That is underway, done by Dr. John Bew, but under the guidance of Jonathan Powell, the national security advisor. And the advice he's been given from the chiefs at the moment, the Prime Minister, you have got to have a strategic command paper by the summer recess saying, what's it all about, Alfie? What are we for? What do we stand for? What are we prepared to stand up for? And that's the big problem, because we now see a classic from the classical history of China, of ancient Greece, of a nation that is prepared to spend all kinds of money on all kinds of aspects of government, but not seeing the defence and paying for its defence as the prime concern.
Well, just a word more on this, Robert, because this is really a fascinating story. You're telling us that the Prime Minister, in a sense, is just not willing to face up to the enormous scale of the task in getting Britain's defences up to the level that's needed, facing the threat from the east, from Russia, of course, the challenge in China, with America sort of disentangling itself from European defence at the same time. It involves a huge new commitment, a huge amount of new spending, and the Treasury doesn't seem to want to go there. And the military aren't happy with the hiatus we're going through at the moment. And just a word on that then, Robert, because putting our heads in the sand, or rather the number 10 Downing Street putting its head in the sand along with number 11, that can't be an option.
Well, it does seem to be the chosen option, but as you rightly suggest, John, it can't hold for too long. They've got to fess up about this. Why they don't like this, why they don't like the push to 3.5% of GDP on defence by the end of the decade, by the end of the Parliament, which key European allies, France, Poland, Germany, Norway and Finland, to name but a handful, plus the Baltics, are saying are an absolute necessity if you're going to be in the game. Because one recently retired defence chief who's looked at all the books saying, the way things are going, we're way off the pace for what we're claiming to do. And the fox crying wolf. I'm not crying wolf here. Look at the latest pronouncements, and they've been quite consistent from the Kremlin over the past 4, 5, 6 weeks. No, this is Russia against the West, and the West is not epitomized by Trumpland, but the West is epitomized by Western Europe. And by the way, no exception for Brexit UK there. Very much the Russians are obsessed with the UK, and particularly they're obsessed with our monarchy. And the test, and you watch for the propaganda that is coming out concerning the Victory Day parade, the Great Parade in Red Square, which normally takes place on the 9th of May. And really, Western European governments are being told that they're not particularly welcome. It's being indicated to them because they're seen as part of a neo-Nazi conspiracy with Vladimir Zelensky's regime in Kiev. that's where we are.
That's fascinating stuff, Robert, and concerning. And we will need to come back to this, and we will. Robert Fox there, defence editor from The Standard, with that update, really rather concerning update on the state of the defence review and our defences and the government's commitment to all of the above.